Zoom is preparing the live stream. All right, all right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here for the interview with Patrick. It's going to be a really great interview because he does a lot of great music, and it's really funny because the album is actually called Bring Me to Life, which is the name of our network. So it's really exciting to have you here. Patrick, can you unmute yourself and introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, I am Patrick and my music project is called Momentology. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've had you on before, but it seems like that was quite a while ago, and I've just
Beautiful.
noticed that you've posted, you know, a lot of music. It's like you just don't stop.
Yeah, it's been a pretty nice flow for like the last 3 years. You know, as an artist yourself, I'm sure you can understand sometimes there's all this inspiration and you just got to keep making, and sometimes it stops. Well, there's been stops, but when it flows, there's just so much that comes out that, if it's flowing for like 3 months, I might have music to release for the whole year.
So one thing I am curious about is I was writing a little article review and I tried to count how many albums you had, but I couldn't really do it. So including your EPs, how many albums would you say that you do have?
I don't even know the count. I know on Bandcamp there's some singles in there too.
Mhm.
So, and there's remixes, there's collaborations with other people. But I think full albums, I think I'm gonna go with six.
All right. Cool.
EPs
So
included, maybe eight, and
nice.
then releases total like over 25,
Hmm.
something like that.
Definitely a lot of releases. So tell us a little bit about this album, Bring Me to Life. What's the deal with this? What inspired you to create this album?
Well, I actually just moved to Illinois, and it was winter, so it was pretty snowy for a lot of the time. I'm sure you understand Illinois
Hmm.
gets kind of cold. So I wasn't really going outside much. I came from Florida, so I'm used to going outside like every day. Actually not all the time because it's so hot, but
Yeah.
the majority of the time you're okay to go outside. So I'm kind of in the studio for most of my time from like January to, or I'll say December to February. And I sat down and I hadn't actually made new music in quite a while. It was maybe like 2 months at the time. And I've been making a lot of collaborations and doing a bunch of remixes. So I was thinking like, what do I want to do now? Because I'm working with other people for other people's projects, got the client stuff. Like I'm just gonna make a couple tracks. And I really wanted to make more modern sounding tracks with like a hip hop vibe. That was the first intention, was like something you could hear on the radio, like an instrumental version of that, or like a really popular Spotify playlist. Because in the past, I'd use a lot of like world instruments, a lot of really eclectic stuff, like with didgeridoos and chanting. I'm like, let me just, that stuff's there. Let me go in a little bit of a different direction. It's a little more modern and a little more just current to what's being played on like a little bit of a mainstream level. I didn't want to go that far, but we'll say like just in that realm. So that was the initial inspiration, and I really wanted to keep the modern yogi in mind, and that was something that kept through the entire process. Was like, okay, I'm making this song with like a more modern mainstream vibe, but if I was practicing yoga, would this song work? And that was the biggest thing for me to check in on, because I've always wanted to keep that in mind, to have the song be mindful, and also keep in mind someone that's doing yoga. Is this song going to be intrusive? If they're in like a meditation, is this song going to energize them or make them relax even more in like yin postures or stuff like that? So that was something that I kept in mind through the whole time. And what had happened was I made like 6 tracks. I'm like, these are great. Maybe I'll make an EP. And then I think that was in about 3 days. I made 6 songs. And for the first time, pretty much ever, I think I've done it like 1 or 2 times, I started to experiment with my voice. So not really singing any lyrics, but just kind of doing really easy oohs and ahs and noises with my voice, and then heavily auto tuning and affecting them. And you hear actually on, I think, track 2 and 3, there's a lot of my voice in there, just kind of carrying some of the choruses and stuff. And then I also used a bunch of other vocal elements from sample packs and places like Splice and Arcade that really like help the song have more of a different flavor, because my voice is only so much, there's
Right.
so many things that I can't do. So that's kind of a summary, like the initial inspiration. And then once I had like 3 songs, and then it was 6 songs, and then I had like 10, and I'm like, let's just do a whole thing. Actually, I asked someone, and I'm like, do you think this should be a little release, like 9 or 10 songs? And she told me, she goes, I think you should do a whole yoga practice, like a 60-minute yoga practice. I'm like, okay, I'll do it.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I noticed a lot of people do use work with it for yoga, and we'll probably get into that a little bit after. I wanted to have you introduce our first song because we do have a few songs to play for everyone, and I think it's kind of fascinating that you chose the name "Bring Me to Life,"
Yeah.
and that you also have a song called "Bring Me to Life." So, could you introduce this song for us, and then we'll play that for everyone?
Bring Me to Life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a good one, because I was able to share a lot of guitar riffs, kind of, that I had like building up inside me. You have all this art. For me, I have all this art inside me, and it wants to come out. So I got to lay down some really nice guitar, some harmonies with it, and then I found these really nice vocal packs that had the words "Bring Me to Life" in there. And I was like, this is perfect. This fits exactly with what I'm going for this album, because going back to what I was saying, it was winter out. I felt like it was a really like like a time to just reflect. And as I was like looking out my window, it was snowing. I'm like, bring me to life.
Yeah, I love the name. So, um, let's go ahead. Let's play this for everyone, and then we'll be back with Patrick to get more details on his album. All right. Beautiful song. So why did you want to start working with vocals? Is something that you have done before? I know you said that you started working with your own vocals. So what inspired you to use vocals in this album?
Well, I had been using a lot of like vocal samples, and funny enough, it was I was listening to this vocal sample from this pack, and I put it into my song. I was like, that sounds great, but I really wanted to do this, and I like kind of drew it out on Ableton, which is my music production software, and it just didn't sound the same. So I'm like sitting here fiddling with it for like 10 minutes, and that's kind of a long time to be looking at one thing. I like to just move through songs like quick. So I was like, wait a second. It was the wildest realization. I'm like, I have a voice. They're like, I could do this. I could sing this. And I had a like I'll play acoustic guitar and sing. That's not a problem. I have put my voice really subtly in some songs before, but I hadn't really like brought it to the front. So I'm like, I could do this. I could sing. And it was like, I think I'd woken up at like 6:30 a.m., which is pretty rare for me. And it was like 7 a.m. I just got my coffee and I sat down. And it was like this really kind of raspy morning voice because I hadn't talked at all yet. And it was like the first notes that came out of my mouth were on this song. And it was like so kind of so innocent and pure because I had this realization like I could use my own voice. And that's really where it came from. And then throughout the rest of the album, I just decided to just play around with it because it sounded so good with that one moment.
Absolutely. I'm kind of curious why um, producers, especially, seem to not want to use their voice because we could do so much with it in a program like Ableton or Logic. So why do you think it took you so long to be like, oh yeah, I could do this with my voice?
Well, I've always had this fascination with random Rab's music. You know, random Rab.
Yeah.
He sings a lot of lyrics. He uses his voice to do melodies and harmonize with himself, and he sings live. And I've always loved that part of his music because he doesn't appear to be someone who's going to belt out a tune. But then when he sings, it's like so nice and subtle and easy to listen to, and it's not overpowering the music. It's not like you can't hear him. It's like it fits in the pocket. And I've always had a fascination with that. And that was another part of it that kind of inspired me to do that. But in terms of why I don't think producers do, one of the reasons I became a music producer is because I'm like, if I could play my music for people, I don't have to talk as much because that's doing the speaking for me. If I think that way, maybe other people do. I can't speak for anyone else, but
Oh,
I would say maybe it's a reason just because they're producing music and the music's making people dance. And if they could get voices from elsewhere, why would they use their own?
right, right. Yeah, I
Rufus
totally
de
understand.
Soul, too. Do you know Rufus de Soul?
I do not.
He's a house music producer and he sings a lot. Like it's not just like oohs and ahs. He has like full blown lyrics
Mhm.
and he sings live. I love that. That's
Yeah,
a really good artist to check out.
nice. I'll definitely check him out. One person that we've been watching kind of grow because they don't have a lot of music or content is Neon Vines. She does looping videos on YouTube, and she sings with them, and it's just so cool and so awesome to see.
Nice.
So. So did you collab with others on this music? Because I know you collab with a lot of people. So was this like a solo album or something that you had other people work with you?
Good question. This was completely on my own. I love working with people, and as mentioned earlier, I I had been working on collabs for like most of 2019. I had a bunch of my own stuff kind of thrown in the mix, but like I said, in like December, I was sitting there. I'm like, I want to do my own thing. Like it was almost like it was like a deep desire that I hadn't fulfilled in a while. Because the songs I released in 2019, I'd done at the beginning of the year, or even in 2018, and there was a good bit of time where I hadn't really wrote new music just for myself without other people's input and experiences, and that's great. I love making music with other people. Some of the best stuff that I've released is stuff with other people. So this one was just like a deep desire, just Like, what do I want to make?
Mhm. Yeah, I think you need that sometimes. How many there's these producers who have masterclass
Mhm.
that Shannon and I've been listening to,
Nice.
and one of them uses literally like 70 tracks where they have one sound, but they copy it 3 times with like little different inputs for each one, and it seems like
Yep.
that's kind of a lot to have 70 tracks. But
Not
how
much.
so how many tracks do you usually use, and how much time do you spend after you make the music kind of tinkering with the different sounds?
Recently on these, like on this last album, I have like 5 groups of tracks. So it's kind of like a band. I have my drums, my bass, guitar, vocals, and then pianos and synths. It's almost as if I was kind of playing as my own band. And then within that, so it's 5 groups. Within that, I'll have maybe between 2 and 7 guitar tracks that are coming in and out of each other. So like obviously if one's coming out here, one's coming in here, they can't be on the same track. So that still counts as 2, you know?
Mhm.
And then if I harmonize with those, it's 4. And then if I have any more, it adds more. So between, let's just say between 2 and 6 guitar tracks, vocal between 2 and 5. So that's like it's 11 at the most. And then the drums is where it really gets a little more intricate because there's there's a lot that go into the drums. It's probably the most work. Drums and vocals kind of take the most work. Guitar is just like I pick up the guitar and I just play it, and then I make sure everything's mostly quantized and it's done. It's very simple. Um, Bass, same thing. Your bass doesn't change a lot. It's my bass doesn't change a lot. It's very simple and rhythmic. Um, so there's like maybe 3 bass tracks at the most. Sometimes there's just one, like an 808 or like a just a bass, like that bass guitar. Maybe it's just that one thing. And then, like I said, the drums, there could be between 10 and 20 drum tracks. Like one percussion sound could have one whole track just because it needs to be EQ'd in a certain way and compressed in a certain way. So anywhere between 20 and 50. And then I've done tracks with 140 tracks on. That was different time.
So, when you first started creating in Ableton or whatever DAW you were using,
Ableton all the way for
Ableton,
yeah.
okay. So, when you first started on that, how was it kind of like the same? Did you have to start simply because, I've been using something like GarageBand for a long time, and then when I got to Ableton, it was like this is a lot different.
Yeah, it's very different. Well, funny enough, when I started music production, I had this netbook and it was literally like the size of my keyboard, it was like so tiny. And the screen was like literally this big. But it was all I had. I was I think 17 or 18 years old. And I got like a trial of Ableton, which only allows you 8 tracks. And I think I bought an interface and I used like these Logitech computer speakers. It was such a funny setup. And then I got an Akai APC 20, like a kind of like a sequencer, but then it triggered clips and stuff. And I remember sitting down and I'm like, I want to learn music production. And at that time, it was what, 2004 or 5 or something like that. It was a while ago. There wasn't as many master classes. I don't even know if master class was a thing at that point, but there wasn't any YouTube like tutorial sites that were like free.
Mhm.
I bought a book. It was Ableton Live 8. It was literally a paperback book that I would open and read. And if I needed something other than that book, I would like Google it, and you'd find like a forum, like people answering the question.
Mhm.
And there were a couple good YouTube channels, but again, it was like the very beginning of YouTube, and there wasn't that much content. Like now, if you need to do anything, I still do this. Like if I have to do anything, I Google it, click videos, and boom, there's a tutorial on how to do it.
Mhm.
Like I want to make this stutter effect with this specific vocal using this reverb, and it's right there. I find it in 2 seconds. But at the time, there wasn't that, so I kind of had to teach myself. I'd say 90% of the time, I taught myself how to use Ableton as a DAW. I saw other people using like Logic and Pro Tools and even GarageBand, and something just drew me to Ableton. I think it was because I was doing a lot of instruments, and I had bought this loop pedal prior to that. It was this little Boss RC20XL. It had two inputs, and I got these splitters that put the two into two more. And I had plugged in a guitar, a mic, and then a bass and a drum sequencer. So I had four inputs coming out, and I was looping things, and I was really just making these songs that were just these continuous long, like 7-minute loops. And I was like, okay, this is fun, but I need to like take this and do it on somewhere where I can manipulate the sounds and not just have them be printed right on the bat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what drew me to Ableton, was because you could do live looping and you could produce the songs on the same session. So when I first got in there, that was my peak interest. And then as I got into it for the months, it was more of like, okay, here's the loop. Now let's make it into a song. And I really started to put Ableton into practice when me and a friend of mine, John, we formed this 2-man kind of funk electronica band named Acrodamus. And it really allowed me to learn Ableton. And by this time I graduated to a MacBook Pro. I wasn't on my netbook anymore. This was like 4 years down the road, maybe 5. And I was recording him playing guitar. I was recording me playing bass. I was sequencing our own drums. Looking back on it now, the mixes weren't that good, but it taught me how to do everything from scratch. Like, I was my own producer, own recording engineer, mixing engineer, own mastering engineer. Like, I did everything with the help of input from John, my friend at the time. He still is my friend, by the way. And it was like, you start with nothing, like a blank canvas. What can you make? And that was really what kind of inspired that was just the ability to make anything you want.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people who are getting into it right now. Shannon, my partner, is one of them, and I got this MIDI keyboard. It's like it's actually right here, launch key.
Oh, nice.
So I've been like learning how to do
snap.
this.
I have the big version of that.
Oh, do you? Okay.
I have the Novation Launch Key 49, dude.
Yeah. So I got the mini version of what you got.
That's so funny.
It's
so
awesome.
Funny.
I love it so much.
Yeah. You can control Ableton from the top, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's so useful. But my partner Shannon, she got the C board. It's like a I forget what it's called, but it's the C board. It's like this, but it's really squishy, and has MPE, which is supposed to be like 5 different senses, so you can like wiggle like some of the keys.
Is it like gray?
Yeah.
Oh, dope! I saw those. It's by like
Blocks. Yeah, Rolly.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's awesome. I actually wanted to get one of those.
Yeah, well, we got one, and it's taken us a few months to learn how to even use the special features where you can like wiggle the keys and stuff like that. And
like a vibrato when you do that.
Yeah, yep, exactly, the vibrato. And it kind of made her uninspired because of how much effort it took just to get it to work.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Okay, so for anybody else out there who's struggling to learn their new devices, and they're maybe getting a little bummed out, what could you tell them to inspire them to keep going?
So keyboard, I just got this thing. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's by Rolly. It's called the Lumi.
Wow.
So this is a scale. I don't know which one it was, but I was using this scale, and you can program this keyboard to light up with whatever scale you want to play. So this isn't hooked up right now. It could. It's some, I think it's like C sharp maybe. So you're never gonna hit a wrong note as long as you follow the colors.
Oh dang. Yeah.
So like if you're playing, let's say, well, to start, let's say you pick a chord. Like, I want to write this song in C minor. It'll give you all the notes for C minor, and then you can never hit a wrong note. I think the hardest part for people that are starting to make music is they need an experience that tells them they can do it. You know, if they're just, like you said, fiddling around for 4 months with the technical aspect of the keyboard, trying to get it to work, You're not like, yeah, I made music today. You're like, I learned how to wiggle and get a vibrato to show up on Ableton. Like that doesn't really inspire me. It probably doesn't inspire a lot of people. So I would recommend like a really beginner friendly um, instrument, like a ukulele, even tiny ukulele. It's super easy to play. A keyboard, like even the launch key. You know, if you can't get something like a Lumi, I think the Lumis are on like our Kickstarter right now. I got it. I kickstarted it like 2 years ago, and it finally came early this year. I don't even know if they're available to buy, but
Ooh,
you
inside
can.
scoop.
Yeah, I think there's another pre-order for like their new batch that's coming out in like later this summer or something like that. It's also really cool. You ever play Guitar Hero?
Yeah.
So there's a function on iPad or iPhone, I think Android too, where you put it above the Lumi and it shows you the notes as they're coming down. So it's just like Guitar Hero, where like, and if you never play Guitar Hero, there's a note and you hit the note on your fingers. So it's the same deal. Like, let's say you want to play the song, um, I don't know, any song, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star on the keyboard. It'll show you the notes, where to press it. As it's coming down, you press it, and then it gives you points for hitting the right note. So that's a cool way to like start playing music, is to find some fun thing. Funny enough, I really got inspired to learn guitar from Guitar Hero. That was like one of my main inspirations initially. It's a kind of a funny story. I was do you know the band Tool?
Yeah.
So I was listening to a lot of Tool at the time, and I was also playing a lot of Guitar Hero. I'm like, what if I could play Tool on Guitar Hero? And I quickly realized there was no Tool on Guitar Hero. They would never put their song on there. They just got on Spotify. Like they're pretty like that. And I had a PC at the time that I custom built, and I found that you could get like a custom, like people would create custom Guitar Hero songs and upload it onto this like private network, and then you could find an adapter to plug the guitar into your computer. But it was like so much work. I'm like, why would I do that? I'm like, so I asked my mom for her acoustic guitar that she had, and I learned about 20 Tool songs on the acoustic guitar in about 3 months. And I was playing along in headphones, like one ear on, one ear off, playing with the acoustic guitar. And that's literally what got me into playing guitar, which led me to music production. So it wasn't that I was like, I want to learn how to produce music. It was something that really inspired me at the time, which was learning how to play Tool riffs. Just because I still think the guitar playing of Adam Jones from Tool is like so good. It's so simple, it's so easy, but the way he does it is very graceful for a metal guitar. In a way, they're not metal, but they're kind of metal. So that was like the spark. So I'd recommend anyone that's in the space of music exploration, like what inspires you? Try to do something initially that you like really are excited to do.
Mm-hmm.
Not that like, oh, I got to learn this keyboard software. Great. You know, that's kind of boring. To like, wow, I really want to learn these songs on the keyboard, or I want to learn this song on the guitar, or I want to make a beat and then rap over it. It could be anything.
Cool. Well, if you don't mind, I think maybe this will be a good time to play a song, let people think about everything that we have talked about, and then we'll come back for a little bit more talking before we end. Does that sound good, Patrick?
Sounds great, man. Sounds great.
Awesome. Well, then I'll play the song, and it's called Slither, and then maybe you could talk a little bit about it after
Sure.
we play.
Sounds good.
Enjoy Slither by Momentology. had a little boo boo there in the middle of the song, but that's what happens when it's live sometimes. But we will be sharing the full song as we post this around our network. So, Patrick, could you tell us a little bit about the song Slither?
Yeah, yeah. So Slither was created. Uh, I sent my girlfriend the track Snake. So I think Snake was 2 songs later. And she sent me a video back of her dancing to the song. And I'm like, whoa, like if that song made her that inspired to dance in the way that she was, it was like really nice dancing. Um, what if I made a song that was a little more high energy? Like, what would that do? Because she has a really good sense of music. She likes a lot of eclectic stuff. She likes a lot of world music, and I don't know if there is music that she doesn't like. So I'm like, I I really wanted to like make something that she loved to dance to specifically, and not all the songs on the album have that same intensity. It was just kind of like a one-off. I'm like, I didn't even know if I wanted to put it on the album at first. There's a couple songs on there that I was a little hesitant to. So it was inspired by my girlfriend.
Is that is that Jessica?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. She's
yeah.
in the live chat and she did post. I love this song when we played
Oh yeah.
it.
Yep, that's it.
Cool. So, kind of getting back to when you said you were thinking about could people do yoga to this? Could they meditate to this? And our I don't know what to call her, an intern basically. She helps us to write about the album
Mhm.
and stuff that we sent her, and she said that she did use it for yoga, and it was awesome for that.
Nice, nice.
Why is yoga such a big thing for you when creating this album?
Good question. There was a point where I still do yoga, but there was a point where I was doing yoga a lot. And I'd noticed listening to music, there was a lot of music on there on like Spotify yoga playlists. That was it didn't feel like it had like a modern flavor to it. And I really didn't want to listen to a lot of the stuff. Like I love yoga music and the stuff that comes out of like big Spotify yoga playlists. But oftentimes I wasn't inspired to move to it. And that's not saying that other people don't have a different experience. I'm sure there's music for everyone. But I really wanted to make music that was modern, that inspires people to move, that can be used for yoga. So there's a bunch of music that is modern and makes people want to move, but it's totally inappropriate for a yoga class. Sometimes people still use it. I have actually been in a yoga class where the yoga instructor is playing Dead Mouse. I'm like, I love this, but 90% of the people in here might not, you know? And I was like, what can kind of bridge that gap? And that was the initial kind of spark that created kind of the rework of my brand, if you will. I went from in like 2014 to producing really just whatever I wanted to. I was like, I'm just going to experiment because I had just gotten out of a few different bands and we'd made a lot of like jam rock and a lot of like psychedelic jazz and stuff like that. So I kind of came from that and just kind of weaved into Momentology, and it was like kind of still like that. I used a lot of instruments still, like didgeridoos, and I had a lot of like good world beats. And then there became like a defining moment in like 2017 or 18 where I was like I was practicing yoga a lot. I'm like, I want to hear this music because it doesn't really exist. And then that's when I found a couple really good artists, DJ Taz Rashid, Soul Rising. Those 2 artists make amazing music for yoga. And I was like, this is what I want to hear right here. So those 2 were actually a big inspiration to me when I first started to create yoga music. And of course, it's taken a life of its own. And I work with Taz a lot. We have a few albums together. So his mottos have always stuck in my mind. You know, when we produce together, he always reminds me like would a yoga teacher be able to teach over this song? And that comes up sometimes when I'm producing. I'm like, if I was if I was teaching this, if I was a yoga teacher instructing in front of a class, would this song be too much? Like, would I be like, oh, let me turn it down or let me switch the song? Or would I be like, this is perfect? And that always is in the back of my mind when I'm producing. And it came from that initial desire when in like 2016 or 2017 to make modern music for yoga.
Mhm.
And then, people started showing up that kind of were in that vibe to reinforce it, of course.
Mhm.
And it just happened to be a lot of yogis love this music. So I just kept going with it.
Yeah, definitely. I see you sharing on your Instagram quite a lot of people doing yoga routines to your music and especially this album recently that you just released. A lot of people are posting videos on their social media dancing and doing yoga to it.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I guess now would be a good time maybe to tell people how they can find you. What is your Instagram and other social medias?
Yeah. So pretty much everything is Momentology Music. Instagram at Momentology Music. I have a website, momentology.net, and then Facebook Momentology Music. It's pretty standard across the board on Spotify. If you search for Momentology, you'll find all my albums and collaborations. On SoundCloud, if you search for Momentology, you'll find a bunch of DJ mixes I've done for yoga classes, for ecstatic dances, and on Bandcamp, that's probably the biggest way to directly support my music because they don't take as much money off the top like iTunes does.
Mhm.
Um, but in terms of just listening, Spotify is the best place to find my music.
Cool. And I know that you have a website as well. Do
Yeah,
you use that? Is it momentology.net?
yeah. I haven't updated it in a while. I might have some older content on there, but everything is pretty much there.
Cool. What social media do you use the most?
I'd say Instagram.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
So everybody go follow Momentology Music on Instagram.
Yeah, and if you ever feel inspired to move to one of my songs from any place, new album, old album, singles, whatever, and you want to post it, tag me, and I'll likely repost it, or DM it to me, and I'll post it. You can email me. I'm sure there's a bunch of different ways you can contact me, but I love seeing what people do to these songs that I make because I'm usually pretty static in the studio. I mean, this is like my main position right here, and then I'll take it like to my yoga swing, and then I'll see what happens. Does this make
Right.
me want to move, or does it make me want to relax?
Mhm.
So that's kind of how this album was made too. Was if you're in a yoga class, if you've ever taken one, it starts here, builds up. There's a peak, maybe another peak, and then you wind down and you end with a shavasana. So that's how this album was designed. It was designed to go start at a nice pace. It's not super slow, but like, all right, I'm here. I want to do something. I want to move my body. And then there's peaks, valleys. And then you end with a really nice, soothing song. That's how I made this album. And I also have a couple really nice playlists too that I update monthly. I have a yin yoga one. I have one that I create a new playlist every month with most of my own stuff, sometimes collaborations, but I actually just called this month the Bring Me to Life month because I have all tracks. I kind of rearranged some of the order if I was to play it live for this album,
Mhm.
and that's all available on Spotify too. If you go under my Spotify profile, you'll find all my playlists there under public playlist.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and I think
Thank you.
it's definitely I think it's so cool that your album is called "Bring Me to Life,"
That was
and
a coincidence. I was not thinking of this podcast or you at all. It was funny when I released it. I'm like, oh yeah. I remember doing the live performance for you guys, and it's like this. And that I think I sent it to you. I think I was like, hey man, my next album's gonna be called "Bring Me to Life."
Mhm.
No association, but you can use these tracks.
No, I think it's great, and I just love that we're kind of aligned right now, and I wish you many more success with your music and your yoga and everything else. Do you have any advice or any future things you're working on you want to talk about before we go?
Hmm. Any advice or future things? Um, I have a bunch of new songs I'm working on. I don't know when I'm going to release them. Oh, June 28th. It's a Tuesday, pretty sure. Yep.
July?
Sorry, July. June 28th was before.
Yeah.
July 28th, I'm releasing a cover of the Beatles' Yesterday
Ooh.
with Taz. It's a collaboration cover. So it's me and DJ Taz Rashid. And it's like a very modern slow house vibe. And it's an official Beatles cover. So it's not a remix. We don't take the original song, but we performed it ourselves. I did some singing on there. Taz is the
Ooh.
main vocalist. He played the bass. I played the guitar. We did the beats and structure together. It's a really cool rendition of Yesterday. A few
Awesome.
people have heard it so far. So
Cool. Definitely will look out for that. I
yeah.
love the Beatles. Awesome. Well, we have one last song to play for everyone. It's called Origin. I'll let you introduce it, Momentology, and we'll just play it right after that. And that'll be the end of the interview.
So Origin, there was a night. Remember, I was talking about the whole 2 or 3 months where it was snowing out and I wasn't leaving the house much because it was so cold. There was a night where it was like almost like a little eerie feeling, but it wasn't like it wasn't somber, but it was just like there was just it might have been like a full moon vibe. It just felt different than other nights, and I listened to this sample that I got, and it inspired these like really ominous like vocals from me, and the vocals you hear in the song I sung, and some of my pitched down. I put a lot of reverb on them, so it sounds really big, and it's one of the only songs like that doesn't really follow too much of a defined structure. It's just kind of like here's a section, here's a section, here's a section. I don't do that too much anymore. So I really hope you enjoy this one. I'd love to know what you think too, because it was a little bit of an experimental track that I made.
All right. Well, appreciate you being here.
Thank you so
And
much for having me, brother. I appreciate everything you do.
definitely, everybody, please enjoy this song by Momentology called Origin.